Hey folks, how you all doing? So today I thought I would give a revisit to the Bee Gees' Odessa album. This was their sixth studio album overall. In Australia, it was their fourth international release. This was released in 1969 and it was released as a double album. I'll just show you what it looks like. Plain on the back, plain on the front. Open up the gatefold. There's the track listing. The album was originally envisioned as being a concept album about a sinking ship, and you've got the picture there of a boat that's obviously sinking and the lifeboats and throwing a baby into a lifeboat. So that was the original concept of the album. This is on a short-lived Australian label called Spin. From what I found out, it was a label that cropped up in the late 1960s and sort of went broke, closed down, whatever, by the mid 1970s. So I guess this is quite a rare little piece, for want of a better word, with a label that's now defunct. So anyway, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through a bit about the album, several of the tracks, and give my impressions of what I think of the album overall. So it's not a usual Bee Gees album. It was, as I said, it was originally conceived as a concept album about a fictional ship that sunk in 1899. That idea fell apart fairly quickly. There was a lot of internal squabbling and bickering during the making of this album, mainly from Robin Gibb, who wanted his song Lamplight to be the lead-off single. That didn't eventuate. 1st of May was the single. Robin Gibb spat it, left the band for 12 to 15 months, went off and eventually come back. The best part about him leaving and coming back was, I think, that they realised they worked better as a whole unit instead of two separate entities or three separate entities. So I think it was an essential part and an essential hiccup in the uniting of them to go forward with what they did in the 1970s and beyond. So the opening track is called Odessa, City on the Black Sea. It has a running time of 7.5 minutes basically, which is long for a Bee Gees song. About half the songs on this album would have made the concept album, but it didn't go forward, so they just recorded normal songs and put it out as a double album because they had these songs ready to go. The first track, as I just mentioned, lays the foundation for the original concept. The song features Robin on lead vocals. There's a mellotron, cello and acoustic guitar, and of course those gorgeous Bee Gees harmonies that we all know and love. We'll move on a bit. We'll go to track 4, Marley Pert Drive. Musically it sounds a lot like The Weight by the band. That's not a put down of the song or anything like that. That's just, there was a general sound that was going around in the late 68, 69, and that sort of Weight sound had been used similarly previously to The Weight and also after. So it was a sound that was going around. So the Bee Gees didn't copy or plagiarise or anything. I'm just comparing it in a nice way. Track number 6, Melody Fair, could almost be a sequel to Eleanor Rigby by the Beatles. Again, I'm not saying they plagiarised anything. They didn't. Just the storyline could have been a sequel to Eleanor Rigby. If you change the name of Melody Fair to Eleanor Rigby, it certainly would have been very similar flow on from Eleanor Rigby. The first true Bee Gees sounding song on this album, as in classic Bee Gees sound, is Robin's Lamplight, which is the one that he did want to be released as the first single of the album. It contains all the classic elements of a Bee Gees song from the late 60s, early 1970s. Move on to track 11, a very country sounding song called Give Your Best. Main instruments on here are fiddles and banjo for accompaniment, which is really, really good country sounding song. Then we can head up with 2 instrumental tracks. Again, that's another thing that's unusual for a Bee Gees album. Track number 12 is a piano instrumental called 7 Seas Symphony. Absolutely brilliant. I'm not a fan of instrumentals overall, but the melody of the music in that song is just absolutely brilliant in my opinion. That's followed up by the second instrumental, With All Nations. To me, that sounds very similar to God Save the Queen, as in the Monarch song for the Queen. It sounds very similar to that. It's not the same, but it's similar vibe to it in my opinion. Let's move on to track number 15. That has a bit of a Massachusetts feel to it, just in the music, not vocally, not lyrically, and not melody wise. Just there's a vibe just in the music. It could have been similar to Massachusetts. The second last track on the album is 1st of May. It's a beautiful ballad. As we all know, it was released as a single. Anyone that has a Bee Gees compilation will have 1st of May on it. I think they were right in releasing it as a single ahead of Lamplight, simply because in hindsight it reached top 10 in the UK, top 15 in Australia, and top 30 in the US. You couldn't want any more for that sort of song in my opinion. I don't think Lamplight would have achieved the same success as 1st of May, but what do I know? Okay, so what do I think of this album overall now I've listened to it? Musically, I think it's a bit too much of a muchness. There's very little variation in the sound of the songs. They all seem to plod along at the same sort of level. 2, personally, I think the Bee Gees were out of their element trying to create a concept album. Instead of writing from the heart, it feels like they had to try and complete a project with a certain theme and with a certain style. So the album just sounds clinical. It sounds uninspired, and it hasn't got the spark you would expect from Bee Gees songs. For the most part, half these songs were written for the concept album, half were not. That was just to complete the album. So yeah, half the album does sound quite clinical, for want of a better word. 3, I think it's one of those albums that are worth consideration for an artist to step outside of their comfort zone and do something slightly different. Sometimes those sort of albums work and sometimes they don't, but they can always fall back on what they're good at. Bee Gees went for it. I don't think it worked as well as they probably thought it was going to at the time, and they went back to what they were good at doing after this. So it's a learning curve, it's a learning process. They probably had it in their hearts and in their heads that yeah, we need to do a concept album. Didn't work. They got it out of their system and got back to what they were good at. It's as simple as that. And 4, the album, it fails, and it does fall flat on a couple of levels, and that's the fact that everything's, or half of it, sounds clinical and sterile, like they were going through the motions to write these songs to complete a project as opposed to being natural and writing from the heart. There's still enough little nuggets on this album to make it an interesting listen. It's certainly not the best Bee Gees album around, but it is a good album in my opinion. It's a Bee Gees album without sounding like the Bee Gees, but still sounds like the Bee Gees, if you get what I mean. I know it doesn't sound right, but you have to listen to it and you'll get what I mean. It's a Bee Gees album that doesn't sound like the Bee Gees, but still sounds like the Bee Gees. It's as simple as that. That's the best way I can put it. It's an interesting curveball in their extraordinary back catalogue, and it is worth a listen. I rate this double album at 7 out of 10, which is pretty good for double albums, because most double albums do have fluff filler on them. But I think this is quite a good album. It's not a great album. It's certainly not my go-to album, but it's an interesting listen. So if you have this, revisit it. If you don't have it, go and stream it or purchase it and give it a listen. You might be pleasantly surprised by some of it. As I said, it's not your usual Bee Gees type album. Anyway, guys, if you do have this album, if you do like it, leave your comments in the comments section below. Or if I've spurred you on to maybe go and seek it out and listen to it, maybe leave your comments as well once you've listened to it, and come back and let me know what you think of it. Anyway, guys, just thought I'd give that a bit of a revisit because it's an interesting album. Anyway, stay safe, take care, all for now, catch you around. Bye, folks.